Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. And today we get to have another special episode of the Sports Page with Bob Case. Bob has done such a terrific job of bringing on some of these fantastic personalities in the Major League Baseball world. And he's got another one today. Here's a guy that played 19 years in the Bigs, 8-time All-Star, World Series appearance, an MVP, everything that you possibly want. If you were a manager, you'd want a guy like Lance Parrish on your team and in your lineup. And we have Lance today. Thank you, Bob, so much. Appreciate it. You're always bringing in somebody that not only was great to the game and understands how good the game was to them, but with great stories and just a fantastic personality. I'm going to learn a lot today.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Thanks, Harper. And Lance, it's an honor to have you on here. And, I got to tell you, Darrell Evans, who has been my best friend my whole life, that's when I got to meet you originally with the Tigers, going down there to see him in the locker rooms and everything with everybody. And Darrell said something to me. I always say, if I want to find out about a player, I don't read bubblegum cards or go to the media or talk to fans. I talk to players, okay? And Darrell Evans said something that just blew me out of the water. Darrell played 21 years in the major leagues, hit 414 homers, the oldest man in baseball history to lead the league in homers with 40 with the Tigers in 85. Right. Hit 40 with Hank Aaron and Davey Johnson, the first time three men hit 40 in one season. He just had a marvelous career, okay? So he said to me something that knocked my socks off. He said, Bob, I was in the big, in 21 years with three teams. And he said, there's only two guys. He said, the first time when I went to West Palm Beach and walked in the Atlanta Brave clubhouse, he said, as soon as I walked in the clubhouse, no words had to be said. I knew Hank Aaron was the leader. I knew it right away. And he just told me, he said, Bob, there's only one other player that I could say that about. He said, in Lakeland, Florida, when I walked in the clubhouse, I knew right away who the leader of that team was in 1984. And he said, I was a little nervous. And he said, he loved Detroit. I remember him telling me before the season, spring training started, they took him to a Red Wing hockey game and they announced him. And he said they gave him a standing ovation at the hockey game, the Red Wing game. So he said he knew right then this is a real sports town. And he met his beautiful wife, Diane, who was a Tiger fan and grew up in Detroit. And, the whole, anyway, it's just, and when he told me that, it rocked me. It just rocked me when he said they called him the big wheel. He said and Darrell, like a lot of people, he said, Bob, there's catchers in the Hall of Fame. They're not as good as Lance Parrish. And I played against some of them. So I know. So there's another guy that these writers that never had a jockstrap on that vote don't know what's really going on. Who was the most valuable player on that team, and so when I hear it from Darrell, it's not like hearing it from anybody else in the world, because this guy grew up with baseball. His mother played professional baseball. His uncle played professional baseball. His grandfather, Dave Salazar, played in the AAA with the San Francisco Seals. So he's had baseball on his whole life. So when he talks about baseball, I listen. And that's all I can say. What a great compliment and what a great honor to have you on. And, Lance, when I met you, I was just another guy that you've met in your fat, but you were always a classy, nice, approachable guy. You never big leagued anybody. You never act like a effing jerk. You're always a class act. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate that, because as I used to manage a lot of ball players, and I used to tell my players, I'd say, look, if you go in a Kmart in Ottumwa, Iowa, let's say you're Darrell Evans, and somebody comes up and asks you for your autograph, and you're nice to them, you may be the only ball player they have ever seen. Casey Stengel told me that when I was working for him. You may be the only ball player they have ever seen. So if you give them 10 seconds of your time, they'll tell their grandchildren that I saw Darrell Evans in Kmart in Ottumwa, Iowa. And that's the way you were always, a gracious person, Lance. So it's an honor to have you on here. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Darrell was a big addition to our ball club, and I have nothing but respect for him. And, he probably brought more to the table when he joined our organization than a lot of people realize. So I appreciate those comments. He was you know, he didn't have his best year when we won the championship in '84, but he probably made the biggest contribution in the clubhouse, being a mentor to all of us younger guys that were trying to, you know, put something together that year. His voice was very well respected in the clubhouse. We obviously all respected him as a baseball player, but just a great guy and a great addition to our ball club. And it's no shock to me that when he was introduced at the hockey game that, you know, the Detroit fans gave him a standing ovation because, you know, the sports fans here in Michigan are pretty special. And they love their athletes and they love their teams. And obviously the Detroit Tigers are the only baseball team here in Michigan. And, you know, they were very hungry for a championship team. And he really was the first big free agent addition that we had made to our ball club in a long time. So everybody thought that, you know, here comes Darrell Evans, he's going to help us get over the hump, and he certainly did. So, you know, I appreciate those thoughts, and, you know, my feeling on the, you know, trying to treat people the right way, that's the way I was brought up. You know, I just could not see myself turning anybody away for an autograph or having an opportunity to say a nice word to them. You know, I know, you know, being a father now, what that meant to my own kid. You know, and I can only imagine if my son went up to somebody and he blew him off, you know, that would not only make me not like the guy that blew him off, but that would make me feel terrible for my own son. So I tried to never do that.
You know, growing up in Pennsylvania, in the Pittsburgh area, and then in Los Angeles, it's interesting that you mentioned, you know, the as a kid, what was it like for you? Was there a hero? Was there a one specific baseball, football, basketball? Was there one person or personality that you really enjoyed? Was there a team that you followed when you were younger, Lance? What started you getting involved with baseball and the love of the game?
Well, you know, interestingly enough, my mother and my father are both from the Pittsburgh area. We ended up leaving Pittsburgh for Southern California on my 6th birthday. We flew out to Southern California to meet my dad and my mother met in the Marine Corps. They were both Marines. And when my dad and they both got out eventually, but when my dad got out, he joined the sheriff's police department, I should say, in Pennsylvania, Clarendon, Pennsylvania, where my mother grew up, actually. He grew up more in the Pittsburgh area, but he had to walk a beat in the wintertime, the summertime. You know, he tells the story that he got so sick and tired of having to walk a beat in the snow and the freezing cold weather that if he never saw snow again, it would be too soon. So we had a relative out in Southern California that said, you know, the LA Sheriff's Department is hiring, and all you need to do is come out here and go through the academy, and you're pretty much in. So he left us in Pennsylvania, flew out to Southern California, stayed with my aunt and uncle, went through the academy. It took him 6 months to do that. And when he graduated from the academy, my sister and my mother and I flew out to California to meet him. And then the rest is history. I basically grew up in Southern California. I don't have too many memories of being in Pittsburgh other than being around my relatives back there. I didn't play sports. I was too young. But when I got to California, I had a few cousins that were running around that were into athletics and playing baseball, and we used to play over the line and pickle and all that stuff that I don't think they even play anymore. But we'd play football out in the street, play basketball, whatever. We were in Rosemead, California for, I think, 2 years, and then we moved to Diamond Bar, which was just a kind of a brand new community.
Yeah.
They were developing houses in the middle of the Diamond Bar Ranch, and that's where I basically started playing Little League and football and getting together with all the neighbors and doing all that. As far as sports heroes go, I'll be very honest with you, and I've told this story a million times. I didn't really follow sports that closely. There weren't too many games on television, number one.
Yeah. That
wasn't so much a big deal. I very seldom read the newspaper or the sports page. It was just all my interactions with all my buddies that really, you know, I guess lit the fire under me to be a competitor and to play sports. I just love the competition. I love to compete. But my mother and father being from Pittsburgh, whenever the Pirates would come to town to play the Dodgers,
Sure.
we would go to Dodger Stadium. So my mom's favorite player was Roberto Clemente, so I naturally attached myself to Roberto Clemente.
Absolutely.
Anytime that we were out on the patio doing jobs, my dad was working on the house or doing something, he either had the Dodger game on the radio, listening to Vince Scully and Jerry Doggett, or listening to the Angels with Dick Enberg. So, I pretty much had a steady diet of that.
Well, Lance, I'm very disappointed in you that you didn't learn how to do math. Simple stuff like when he has one hit at 3 at-bats, that's a 333 percentage. And when he goes 2 for 4, that is a 400, or two for 4 is 500. Excuse me. See, I don't even know that. That's how Bob and I, we've kind of teased each other. That's how we learned math, and we were able to apply it. And then divide by 9 if you want to get the ERA. Okay, that's how you kind of figure this stuff out. But not so much with you, and that's great. I'm teasing with you, of course. But eventually, you get to the point where you do start playing. You're good in high school, right? A little bit of everything: baseball, basketball, football, all of it, right?
Right. I just went from one sport to the next. So, it kept me busy, kept me out of trouble. Like I said, I loved playing. I loved the competition. When I got to high school, my freshman basketball coach, he not only was our freshman basketball coach, but he ended up being one of the football coaches. And, I was a defensive back and a linebacker and all that my freshman year. And, he had me going in that direction. He was unbelievably motivating and, pushed us and just a great mentor and a great coach. But I went from football to basketball to baseball. And then I played a little bit of summer baseball when they had Pony League or, Colt League or whatever flying around. And then I just start back over into football and started all over again.
Yeah. Next thing you're doing 7-on-7 camps, if they had those back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Your size and everything, bigger guy. There weren't a whole lot of them. Were you the biggest guy on your team, or were there a couple others that were your size?
I mean, we didn't have guys that are anywhere near as big as they are now. We had some guys that were pretty good size. When I graduated, I was 6'3", 190, 195, somewhere in there. And I started filling out gradually. But we had some pretty big guys on our team. I played quarterback. My senior year, I played quarterback my freshman year. In between, we had a guy that was a really good quarterback, and he was the man. So that I got the opportunity to play other positions. I was a receiver, a tight end, a wide out. I played safety. I played linebacker. I played all over the place. So it was, fun to be able to experience all the different positions. And, eventually when it came down to it, I guess I was good enough to have the opportunity to have some guys come around and want me to go to their school. So I went on a few recruiting trips to, the different schools and settled in on UCLA. Maybe if I did it over again, I might have picked USC over UCLA because USC seemed to kick their butt every year in football. So, and they had a great baseball program as well. But when I was being recruited by UCLA, Dick Vermeil was the head football coach there. Yep. And Gary Adams was just coming over as the baseball coach from UC Irvine. And he stayed there forever, had a great career there. So I would have loved to have the opportunity to play for him. But, as it turns out, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it turned out fine. What would you say your greatest asset was? You were talking about, you're about 6'3", 190, something like that. If you don't mind me saying so, getting out as a wideout or playing DB, you could run, right? Was that one of the things that you said, hey, if there's nothing else that you can depend on me, I'm going to get there because I got some wheels?
Well, I wasn't a burner by any stretch. I mean, I could run, but I was pretty quick. I had good moves. I could get open. I had good hands. I could catch the ball. And as far as the quarterbacking thing went, I always had a strong arm from the time that I was very young till maybe not now, but all the way through my major league career. I could throw a ball, whether it be a football or baseball or whatever. Maybe that was from all the rocks I threw when I was a kid. I don't know.
Sure.
Hey, Harper, I was going to tell you something. Another thing I forgot to say that Darryl said, which was incredible to me, he said that Lance was not only a great hitter with the 300 home runs and da-da-da. He said, Bob, he was the best defensive catcher I ever played with. And he said he was the best at blocking the plate I ever saw, at blocking the plate. So, it's just That's what I'm saying. You weren't just a one-dimensional player. You did it all. He was a great defensive catcher, team leader, powerful hitter. Darryl talked about the home run you hit off Goose Scotches in the World Series. He said, Bobby, I guarantee that ball was 100 miles an hour, and when it left his bat, it was 120. That's what Darryl told me.
I didn't get a chance to watch it very long. It got out pretty quick. I'll be honest with you, and I have to, pass some of the credit along, obviously. I had some very good teachers when I was coming through the minor leagues. I've talked an awful lot, throughout my career about Les Moss, who was my manager in AA, AAA. He was the manager in Detroit for a little while before Sparky took over. He basically was responsible, in my eyes, for getting me to the big league. And I've said a million times, I've said it once, if it wasn't for Les Moss, I don't think I would have ever made it to the major league. I was pretty rough around the edges. I had, some issues with some things I needed to work out. I mean, I was a really good ball player in high school, but, reality hit in a hurry when I got to professional baseball. I never saw so many breaking balls and sliders, guys wore me out. And if it wasn't for Les Moss, kind of taking me under his wing and teaching me how to hit off-speed pitches and stay back on the ball, to do all the necessary things I had to do to become a decent hitter, I would have never made it. But and him being a catcher when he was a player, he also worked with me on my blocking the plate and calling pitches and all of that. So it was a great thing for me that he became my manager when he did. And I've told this story a bunch of times as well. When I signed out of high school, I for my entire career from Little League all the way through my senior year in high school, I either pitched or I caught primarily. Every once in a while, I might have played the outfield, or they might have stuck me over at third base because somebody was injured. And, I was a pretty good athlete, so they felt pretty comfortable sticking me wherever they had to stick me. But primarily, I was a catcher or pitcher. So when the Tigers drafted me, Jack Deutsch actually was the guy that was representing the Tigers that came to the house. When he sat down with my dad and I, he said, well, the Tigers want they want you to play third base. And I was kind of taken aback by that. I go, third base? And he goes, yeah. I go, well, I feel like I've been catching and pitching my whole career. I was just kind of shocked by that. And he said, well, that's where the Tigers want you to play. And I figured, well, what do I know? I'm just getting out of high school. If they want me to play third base, I'll play third base. Well, so I go to rookie ball and play third base. And then right after the season's over, our farm director, Hoot Evers, calls me in and says, okay, here's the deal. You're not catching or you're not playing third base anymore. We're going to move you to catcher. And we want you to switch hit. And I was like, switch hit? I said, I've never switched hit before. And he goes, well, we've been talking, and we feel like with that short porch in right field in Detroit, if you ever get the hang of this, there's no telling how many home runs you'd hit. And I go, but I've never switched hit before. You know what I mean? And so I went from rookie ball, playing third base the whole year, and we had a great rookie ball team, by the way. We were in the Appalachian League in 1974. We played a 70-game schedule. We were 52-17.
Oh, wow.
We just rolled through the league. Mark Fidrich was on that team. That's when he started. He got signed the same year. A few other guys that made it to big leagues for a little while. But after the season was over and I was told that I was going to now be a catcher and a switch hitter, I went to instructional ball, and I didn't really get to play that much in instructional ball. The games we played, I was primarily in the bullpen, warming guys up because I was, they wanted me to, I guess, learn the way they wanted me to catch. But I got sick and tired of catching in the bullpen every day. It was insane. And then I was in the batting cage working on my switch hitting. So fast forward from that into my next year in A-ball, which was Lakeland, Florida, which was high A at the time. And the point that I always bring up is that when I went to Lakeland, my manager was a guy by the name of Stubby Overmeyer,
Yep.
who was a left-handed pitcher in the big leagues for a little while, and he was 5'8".
Yep.
I mean, he came by his name honestly. We also had one other coach, Mike Dwyer, who was also a pitcher when he played. I had no hitting coach. And they just turned me loose, told me they wanted me to switch hit, and I had nobody there to actually work with me or tell me what I was doing right or what I was doing wrong, or maybe you want to make this adjustment or that. And the reason I bring that up, because nowadays, as you well know, you look on any big league team and they've got a hitting coach, an assistant hitting coach, and an assistant to the assistant hitting coach, and they've got the same thing in all the minor leagues. And they've also got roving hitting instructors in the minor leagues. We had none of that. So, here I am trying to figure out how to hit left-handed, and I don't think I ever pulled the ball for the first half of the season. Everything I hit was the other way or up the middle. And at the end of the season, I finally started learning how to turn on the ball. And when the season was over, they told me, "You're not switch hitting anymore." I just went, I felt like these guys were trying to derail my career as fast as they can, and it was like, so I went from playing third base to batting right-handed to catching to switch hitting and still catching and just batting right-handed again. So I was an absolute mess. But that's when Les Moss came on board, and they moved me up. They kept moving me up every year. So the next year I went to Double-A, and Les Moss, after he watched me struggle my butt off for the first half of the season in Double-A, made me start coming to the ballpark every morning at like 10 o'clock in the morning to work on my hitting. So I worked on my hitting at home. I worked on my catching on the road, and I hit off the curveball machine like every day, every morning. He was bound and determined to get me to learn how to hit a breaking ball and how to stay back on it, because I was a typical lunger guy going out and getting fooled all the time. But, it eventually got to the point. And here's the deal. Everybody's got their hitting strategies as a hitting coach. There was nothing that he told me to change mechanically. He wasn't about trying to change my mechanics or any of that. He gave me an objective. I had to hit off the curveball machine, but he said you have to hit everything up the middle. You have, he had put markers out in right center and left center. As long as you stay in the middle right there, you can stay in the cage and keep hitting. But as soon as you deviate from that, you swing and miss, you foul the ball back, you hit a ball in the right field corner, left field corner, you got to get out of the cage and the next guy goes in. And there was always a couple other guys that were in there hitting early, but I was always on the mandatory list. So in the very beginning, I couldn't do that. I could not hit a ball up the middle, and it actually got to be pretty embarrassing for me. So it was like I had to take a huge step back and just try to stand there and make contact with the ball and watch it all the way in and just try to hit a little ground ball up the middle and then progress from there. And over the course of that second half, I went from that to driving the ball up the middle to hitting home runs to center field and right field. And I kind of took off in the second half of the season and finally had a decent half, because the first 2 years when I was in the minor leagues, I had horrible numbers. I hit 213 and 220. The year that I was in A-ball, I hit 5 home runs, I think, in Lakeland. I hit 11 home runs in rookie ball. And I think I hit 14 home runs in Double-A. But when I went to Triple-A the next year, I finally had a breakout season. And as they say, timing is everything. So I ended up hitting close to 280 with 25 home runs and 90-something RBIs. And I was a September call-up that year, along with Trammell and Whitaker and Jack Morris had already got there. Bird was there. So that's when the whole influx of minor league guys started happening. And, fortunately for me, I ended up having a good year when it mattered most.
Lance, would you say that basic fundamental of just I don't care how you do it, but if you can't hit the ball between the lefts, let's say you put a traffic cone or so, a tennis ball out, some marker that you have, learn to hit up the middle. Then you learn to hit with power up the middle. Then you learn to drive the ball. Right. And then if you're late or early, you're still you're gonna put the ball in play.
Absolutely.
That's one of those basic fundamentals that you wish you would have learned when you were in junior high or you're playing pony or a Colt League ball, right? But you had to learn it. What was this, Triple A when you finally got the lesson?
Double-A was when we started all that. So, and like I say, far be it for me to criticize anybody on any hitting lessons or teachings that some of these hitting coaches share with their players. But, Les was, kept it pretty simple. For me to go in the cage and have somebody, hold your hands here, hold your, stand this way or whatever, would have made things way more complicated. But he gave me an objective, hit the ball up the middle. You figure out how to do it. As we've got the whole second half of the season. So sooner or later, you're going to figure out how to maneuver your body, use your hands, keep your weight back, and do the things you need to do to hit the ball back up the middle, which I did eventually. I figured, it finally clicked with me. Okay, this is what I need to do. And I just kept repeating it and kept getting better and better at it till I was finally driving the ball the way I was supposed to.
And is it fair to say that, hey, if you don't do it, if you foul one away, someone else is going to take that cage time. You're going to lose some swings. So he created a hunger in you that you got to do it now.
It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. It was very humbling, and I was sick and tired of being embarrassed. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to get this right if it kills me. And that was my motivation.
Yeah.
Lance, you said that you hit 5 home runs at Lakeland, right?
Right.
Well, I used to always hear, because I had friends that signed, Jack Deutsch signed and played with the Lakeland Tigers. They used to say that was the Florida State League was the hardest league to hit home runs in. Like a guy would lead the league with 10 home runs. Am I correct in saying that? The Florida State League?
Actually, I think you are probably correct. But, I didn't really pay attention to everybody else. I just knew that I was not being very successful. So that, that didn't sit right with me.
I love that Jack Deutsch signed you, because what a class act he was. He signed 3 of my friends. He signed a guy named Mike Small, gave him an $80,000 bonus. He never got on a double-A ball, but he had a couple of my friends played for the Rocky Mount and Statesville and then made it to Montgomery Rebels and Toledo. But what a class act. And I'm so glad when I was talking to you the other day when you told me Jack Deutsch, he was such a gentleman, and he actually coached at Cal State LA. Did you know that later?
Yeah.
But what a thing for him to say he signed you. I mean, what a great thing for his career.
Well, funny story about that signing. Like I say, this is 1974. Right. I didn't have an agent. I don't even know if there were agents back then.
No.
But, excuse me, my dad was my agent. Okay. So Jack called and said he was coming over on Saturday or whatever day he was coming over. And my dad was my representative. We sat there and listened to Jack. Jack was great. He's very patient about the whole process. But when he came in, he told me again that, Tigers want you to play third base. And, after we sat and talked for a while, he said, okay, the Tigers are prepared to offer you $60,000. And I had a guy, when I was playing my senior year in high school, one of the coaches, I can't even remember what school in our league, but he came up to me and told me, look, you're going to be a number 1 draft pick. He goes, I guarantee you're going to be a number 1 draft pick, which, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I didn't have that much confidence in myself, but he told me that. And he goes, and I'm going to tell you another thing. Do not take less than $100,000. And I was like, are you kidding me? He could have said $100 million and it would have had the same impact. It was like $100,000. I mean, that was like way, beyond anything I could have ever imagined. So, I kind of let that go in one ear out the other and took it with a grain of salt. But when I sat down with Jack, my dad and I, he said, okay, the Tigers are prepared to offer you $60,000. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of money still, So at the time I was very confused as to what I wanted to do. I mean, the whole professional baseball thing was new to me. I never really followed it that closely. I know I had signed a letter of intent to go to UCLA. Was I real keen about going to school and, continuing my education and doing more schoolwork? Not really. But, I was excited about the opportunity to go play football for Dick Vermeil. And, I was looking forward to that whole experience. But if I signed my name on that dotted line, with Jack there, I knew that in the next few days I was going to be on an airplane to Florida. And I was going to be gone for the summer, which, I hadn't even turned 18 yet. I had never been away from my family before. So I was a little leery about pulling the trigger on that. So, the conversations went on. And, I said, well, that's a great offer. I said, but, I need some time to think about it. And he goes, well, I'm going to tell you right now. He goes, that's all the Tigers have, authorized me to offer you. And that's it. If you're looking to get any more money, that's all the money I've got. And I go, hey, I'm not looking for anything. I just need some time because this is a big decision. And I don't know which way to go, really. So, my dad's listening to all this, and he says, he looks at Jack and he goes, hey, do you mind if Lance and I go in the back room and just talk a little bit? And Jack goes, sure, by all means, go ahead. So my dad goes, come on, let's go. So we go in the back bedroom, and I walk in first, and he closes the door behind me, and he turns around and looks me right in the eye, and he goes, $60,000. He goes, you know how much money that is? He goes, you know how much time it would take me to make that? And I go, I know, it's a lot of money. I go, yeah. I go, you're not making this any easier on me. And he goes, hey, that's a lot of money, man. And you're the Tigers' #1 draft pick. They're going to give you every opportunity to make it. And I go, I get it. I know all that. I said, but this is a hard decision for me to make. I'm not ready to do it right now. And so, he kept working me, and I was like, man. So finally he gave up, and we went back out, and he says to Jack, well, would it be all right if, you give Lance a little bit of time and, can you come back in a couple days or whatever? And he goes, yeah. He goes, the Tigers would like to get this done. And again, that's all the money we got. So, he says, I'll be back in a couple days. So a couple days he comes back, and he walks in, we sit down, same deal, little conversation. He goes, okay, the Tigers are prepared to offer you $67,500. And I didn't even say a word. So I was thinking, well, I had already made up my mind that I was going to do it anyway. So
you just got a raise.
Yeah, I got a raise without even saying a word. But I signed my name on that contract, and within a day or two, I was on a red eye to Tampa to start my professional baseball career, and it was wild after that for a while. But obviously settled in pretty nicely.
What was that like for you being away from home for the first time? Right, you're you got a couple bucks in your pocket. That's good. But I'm sure your dad said, all right, this goes in the bank or this goes in a savings account. They didn't have 401ks in, but you were going to put a lot of that away, right?
I never saw that money.
You never saw it?
My dad and mom put it in the bank, and that, I just forgot about it. I did buy a vehicle when I got back from rookie ball.
Yeah.
But, that money I didn't even think about. And, being away from my family wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I fit right in with all the guys, and it turned out to be a lot of fun. And it was a grind, no doubt about it. But it was a fun grind, and I enjoyed the heck out of being around all my teammates and going through that battle. Our manager that year was a guy by the name of Joe Lewis, who was, if you could ever put somebody in a position to portray a drill sergeant in the Marine Corps, he would be that guy.
Yeah.
So, he kept his thumb on us the whole time, and he was one of those loud, gravelly voiced, get in your face kind of guys. But you know what? We all responded to it, and we all had a great year. So it was a fun time.
Well, Lance, wouldn't it also be fair to say that because both your mother and father served in the United States Marine Corps, USMC, retired, and you probably knew when to keep your mouth shut when you're getting yelled at instead of complaining or doing something like that, and you just have a simple little yes, sir, I'll do my best, right? Is part of that discipline what helped get you through that first couple of weeks, months, and then years while you're in the minors?
Well, I was never really a complainer anyway. When somebody told me to do something, I just tried to find a way to do it the best of my ability. I would find a way to get it done. I wasn't always successful, but it wasn't because of a lack of effort. So, I was harder on myself than anybody else could ever be. And I expected way more out of myself than probably most people did. So, from that standpoint, I didn't really need a whole lot of motivation. I was driven to try to be as good as I could be. And, he just kind of helped poke and prod us along the way. So, I got a kick out of him sometimes. I didn't appreciate when he got in my face a few times, but, I learned from that.
Yeah. Well, Evansville, Montgomery, we mentioned Lakeland. There's some cities and little towns in not only Florida, but maybe Georgia and Mississippi, Alabama that you got to visit, and you finally get called up. What was that like for you in '77 when you, along with this group of guys, at one point or another, Bob, this is something that I thought would be very interesting. Steve Kemp, Dave Rozema, Jack Morris, Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, and Lance Parrish were all brought up at one point or another in the 1977 Detroit Tiger lineup.
Yeah.
Amazing.
About that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously we didn't really know what was in store for us. The great thing about most of us is we all played on championship teams in the minor leagues, and there's something to be said for learning how to win. I was on a championship team my rookie year in Bristol, Virginia. I was on a championship team on the Southern League in Montgomery, Alabama, the year that I was going through all that stuff. Interestingly enough, Alan Trammell was signed that year in 76, along with Jack Morris. So when Jack Morris signed out of BYU, I believe, he came straight to Montgomery, Alabama, and got into the rotation with us. Tram was playing in rookie ball and tearing it up in rookie ball. And later in the summer, our shortstop went down, and we needed a shortstop. So lo and behold, they plucked Tram out of rookie ball and bring him to Double-A, and he helped us win the Southern League championship.
Wow.
So, it was fun. It's always fun to win, but, it just gave me the opportunity to spend some time with guys that I was going to play a big part of my career with and get to know them. And, Lou Whitaker, I didn't really play with at all until I got to the big leagues. We hooked up occasionally in instructional ball, because instructional ball was like a every year thing. We had guys that used to come down from the big leagues to play in instructional ball with us during those times. It would be like almost like a spring training scenario where we would have workouts in the morning and then we would play games in the afternoon. And, we had guys like Ron LaFleur and Tom Verizor, Jason Thompson, Jerry Manuel. A lot of those guys would come down and, work on a few things and then go home, for the rest of the winter. But, I got a chance to meet a lot of the guys that were, eventually going to be a part of that big league club. And it was a lot of fun.
I want to ask, this may be a difficult question. I don't mean anything disrespectful, so I'm just going to say it the way I see it. Because you learned to win in the minor league level, I know there's a few guys that take their major league experience. As long as I get my paycheck, I'm going to show up, I'll do my thing, and then I go home. But there's a lot of extra work that needs to be done in order to be the champion. Making the team and winning a World Series or winning a Super Bowl or an NBA championship, it takes a little bit more. Do you think that the part that the extra time that you had to learn to hit a curveball, the extra time to work on balls in the dirt, that helped fueled you so that once you made it to the big leagues, you knew that there was a work ethic that was above and beyond what some other guys were doing, and they're going, not in my clubhouse. You're going to give everything that you have. Was that any portion of what it was like for you early on?
Well, it was every bit a part of what I was going through and what I was going through mentally.
Okay.
I wasn't satisfied, and interestingly enough, along that topic, when I was managing in the minor leagues, I used to tell everybody, hey, you can't be satisfied with just being as good as the next guy on this ball club. They only take the, as Les Moss would say, the cream rises to the top. They only take the best players. So you can't sit next to a guy and say, this guy and this guy are having, such and such a year, and I'm doing just as good as they are, so I'm satisfied with that. Should never be your objective in life or in professional sports. You're always striving to be the best. You're always striving to be better. That was always my, intention. Every year I always tried to get better. There was always something that I could do to make myself better. I wanted to hit more home runs than anybody. I wanted to drive more runs than anybody. I wanted to be the best catcher that I could possibly be. I didn't want anybody to ever steal on me when I was behind the plate. So I was constantly making adjustments and doing things to try to improve myself. And, I got a lot of help along the way, but, I also factored in some things, that I took in internally from things that I recognized myself of what I was doing, and I tried to improve upon. One of the things was when I was catching in the big leagues, Ricky Henderson. You know, nobody could throw out Ricky Henderson, and you know, I was pretty quick getting rid of the ball, and I had a really strong arm, and I would make throws right on the money every time, and he would just beat me every time. It drove me crazy. So I was thinking, what could I possibly do to gain an advantage on this guy or get an edge? So, you know, if you watch catchers when they catch, a lot of them, you know, have their footwork and the transfer and all that. So I would try to position my feet so I would stagger my feet. So my right foot was back a little bit, my front foot was a little far ahead. And because I was in that position, I could just catch the ball and come up and throw it without even moving my feet. So I figured I had a strong enough arm that I could pull that off. And that's probably the only other thing that I could possibly think to do to try to throw Ricky Henderson out. And I started getting him. It was amazing. And, you know, I want to pat myself on the back, but it was revealed to me in the not too, you know, distant past here that I threw Ricky Henderson out more than any catcher in baseball.
Did you really?
I didn't have the highest percentage. I think Bob Boone had the highest percentage, but I threw him out more times than anybody else in the major leagues. So
wow,
it worked out.
Hey, do you have any stories with Ricky at the plate? He always referred to himself in the third person? Now Ricky's going to get a hit
Ricky's
right now.
Yeah, Ricky's there. You know, he didn't really talk that much. You know, and you know, I used to get a kick out of listening to him. I think everybody did, but you know, he was a force to be reckoned with. I mean, if anybody put you on your toes, it was Ricky Henderson. You know, most of the time he would go up there, and I always thought that he was just setting us up, because a lot of times he would get up there and he would take the first pitch. He would, you know, like, I'm not even going to swing at him, and he would do that, and he would do that, and he would do that, and then somebody, you know, throw a fastball right down the middle on the first pitch, and next time on, boom, he'd hit it out of the ball.
Yep.
So, you know, I mean, he was just a great baseball player all the way around. The thing that gave me fits about Ricky Henderson is he used to squat down so low that I could never get down low enough to give a stinking target. So it forced me, and I'm not a big fan of getting down on one knee, but he's the only guy that I can think of in my career that I literally got down on one knee so I could give a low enough target to get my, you know, glove in the strike zone for my pitcher.
Unbelievable. While you're on the subject, were there any guys that you know you're buddies with, and maybe you got to meet them in Lakeland or, you know, the Florida League or some other part, and you're friends with them, and then because the average fan can't see what you're saying, right? They can't see, and then they'll always know that when the batter puts his hand on top of his head to adjust and kind of kicks the dirt a little bit, I know you guys are having a little conversation. You're having a little chat. Even the umpires sometimes may go, "Come on, guys, let's go. We got it." Or that's a good one, right there. Were there any favorites that you had of guys that would come up to the plate? Man, I can't wait to talk to this guy.
Well, I mean, to be very honest with you, I didn't really say a whole lot to anybody.
Okay.
I was more of a quiet guy. The one guy that I will say that used to make me laugh half the time when he'd come up was Robin Yount. Robin Yount used to tell me every time he'd come up to the plate to start a series, if we get in a fight, I'm going to kick your ass. I want you. And I would just go, okay, done deal. But he would always, you know, give you that, I'm going to kick your ass if we get in a fight, you know, kind of a thing. So, I used to crack up by that. But, you know, Robin Yount, obviously a great player. Wade Boggs, I used to get on because, you know, he'd get in the box and then he'd step out and he'd draw his little pattern with his feet and do all kinds of stuff. And before he'd get in there, you know, most everybody else, even though I knew quite a few of the guys, you know, other than just saying hi, I didn't really have that big of a conversation with anybody.
Well, Pudge had if you know anything about the history between him and Deion Sanders, Deion would draw his little dollar signs and do some stuff. And Pudge was getting a little older, and he get in the box, kid, get in the box. And it was respecting the game as much as anything. No, it's respecting my pitch. Now, Nolan, if you never played with Nolan Ryan, of course, but if you took your time in the box or outside of the box, he'd brush one right under your chin, wouldn't he? I mean, there are some guys that are going, just get in the box and let's play.
Well, I think Randy Johnson was probably pretty good at that too.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of things that you could do that wouldn't piss Randy Johnson off. So I think everybody walked on eggshells when they got up to the plate.
Now, was Jack that type of guy once you started
Jack
playing?
could be. Jack could be.
Yeah.
He used to get irritated pretty quick. So, if he was having a bad day or somebody was taking too long to get in the box, he would light you up as well. Frank Tanana was that way when he was younger. When Frank Tanana was, flamethrower for the Angels, I remember having conversations with guys before I actually got to the big leagues when we were spring training, because I grew up in Southern California, talking about Nolan Ryan and Frank Tanana. And, I think I might have mentioned something to Steve Kemp about Nolan Ryan. He goes, Nolan Ryan, I'd rather face Nolan Ryan any day than Frank Tanana. He goes, Frank Tanana, he goes, he'll knock you down in a heartbeat, and Frank had that little smirk. If he ran one up under your chin and, you bailed out, he'd just look at you and get a little smirk on his face because he knew that, he got your attention.
Yeah. Yeah, sure did. The team itself in Detroit, your first year there, what is it, 79 and 88, your second year, you're 86 and 76. You finished second. You go fifth your third year, fifth your fourth year. Tough division. You're fighting the Yankees. The Orioles had some really good teams. What were you learning as a player about, gosh, I don't know how hard we have to work? The first couple of years you had Ralph with you, and then you got Sparky in, 79? And what kind of difference did that make in terms of just the clubhouse itself and being able to believe in yourself as a team and realizing we're good? It's going to take a little time, but we're going to be really good one of these days.
Well, to be very honest with you, I would say that early on, the first few years that I was in the big leagues, I kept thinking, man, this is tough. I don't know if we're ever going to be good enough to beat some of these teams. The Yankees were great. The Brewers were great. Orioles were great. Everybody was great, but Cleveland, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And, we had our work cut out for us, no doubt. I didn't know if we were ever going to be able to put together, the kind of attack that we needed to have, offensively, pitching-wise, defensively, to compete with these guys. In 83, I think we finally turned a corner. We ended up finished second to Baltimore that year in our division. And we ended up actually having a better record head-to-head against Baltimore than they had against us, but they won our division, and they ended up becoming world champions that year. We felt like we were the better team, but nobody else could beat Baltimore. So we ended up coming in second. That gave us an awful lot of confidence going into the 84 season. And the great thing about, all of that, you mentioned the managers. We went from Ralph Houck, who was just basically, running out the end of his career. He ended up leaving us, and I thought he was going to retire after he left us, but he ended up going to Boston for a little while. And then Les Moss had an opportunity to come and manage our ball club. And I thought Les was going to be the guy, because I thought Les Moss was not only a great baseball man, but he was a great leader. And when he took over, we had just come back from a West Coast trip, and we had just gotten our record over 500. And I thought, here we go. We're finally turning the corner. We're starting to hit on, all cylinders here, and things are looking up. And as soon as we get into town, I find out that Les got fired, and we hired Sparky Anderson. So I was pissed, because Les was my guy. And I knew all about Sparky and the Big Red Machine and all that. And, but I just felt like Les was a guy that could be a great asset. And he was, he obviously helped me a lot in my career. And I was very, very disappointed that they gave up on him that quickly. But, in hindsight, I know why Jim Campbell did it. He had a chance to get, Sparky Anderson, head of the Big Red Machine and, all that. And I will say this, when he, those years that led up to Sparky becoming the manager, we were, I can't say that we were a ragtag bunch of guys, but, we didn't really have any kind of a dress code or, any kind of a system to operate by. We just showed up and played. Even with Les, I think he was just getting his feet wet as a manager and wasn't really laying any laws down or rules down for everybody to abide by. And then before you know it, he was gone. But when Sparky came on board, everything changed in a big hurry. Everybody had to shave, no facial hair. You had to wear your uniform the right way. They had them crappy socks that we had that I hated, that we had to, I almost felt like they were made out of canvas. You couldn't stretch them to save your life, and they strangled my legs. But, I always tried to go and buy some stretch socks at the sporting goods store and sneak them in and wear them. But Jim Campbell would always tell the clubhouse guy to take them out of my locker and go burn them somewhere. So, I got tired of playing that game. But Sparky, he made everybody shave, no facial hair. Everybody, when we went on the road, had to wear a sport coat, and he would prefer you to wear a tie, but he wasn't going to make it mandatory. And what's funny is after he implemented that rule, guys were kind of grumbling, blah, blah. Well, pretty soon, guys are all showing up with sport coats, and then all of a sudden everybody's showing up with slacks and sport coats and a nice tie. And then everybody's out buying 3-piece suits, and it became a fashion show after a while. So we were probably one of the best dressed teams in Major League Baseball for the time that Sparky was there, because he was, that was big to him. He, my wife always used to say, you dress for success. Sparky was an advocate of that. You're representing the city of Detroit and the Detroit Tigers. You're going to dress the part. So, from the moment he showed up, there's a whole culture change in our clubhouse. He laid all the rules down about how to treat people in the clubhouse. When the reporters come in, he goes, he would tell us, look, they have a job to do too. When they come in here and they want to talk to you or, visit with you, you give them the time that they deserve, because, they're writing on your behalf. They didn't always write complimentary things, but, they also had a job to do. And he recognized that. So, he wouldn't tolerate guys, blowing him off or yelling at him or whatever. And as far as cleaning up the clubhouse, I think the first few times he walked in the clubhouse, when the game was over, there was stuff laying all over the floor, shoes and uniforms and jocks and whatever. So he had a meeting and he goes, we went out and bought some clothes hampers. Okay?
Yeah.
From now on, I don't want to see one thing on this floor. And he goes, it's not the clubhouse kid's job to go around and pick up after you. You're a grown man. Throw your dirty clothes in this hamper. He goes, I've instructed these clubhouse kids, if they find anything on the floor that belongs to you, it's going in the trash can. So those were the kind of things that he implemented. And again, his objective was to try to change the entire culture and makeup of our ball club. And didn't take too long for everybody to kind of toe the line in that respect.
Hey, Bob, knowing what a clubhouse is like, would you like to have a guy like Sparky in there to tell, hey, I don't have to clean up everybody's jobs and tape and everything?
100%. I mean, that was great. Hey, I wanted to ask you something, Lance. When you guys started off, which is still unbroken record, did you, at the time when you guys went 35-5, did you have any idea what you guys were doing? What did you think? Did you know that record, it still hasn't been broken? It's amazing. You guys started off 35-5.
I'm sure there were some guys that were aware of it. I was not. I didn't, again, I didn't really keep track of, those types of things. I knew that we were doing something pretty special. 35-5. We were started out 17-0 on the road.
Unbelievable.
And to this day, and it's funny because to this day, I'll watch. There'll be inevitably a team that starts the season out really hot. Win 15 games out of their first 18 games or whatever, which is very good. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is somebody finally going to catch us? And before too long, that goes by the wayside. It's for me, it's still hard for me, as I'm sure it is for everybody that was on that team, to believe that we were able to accomplish that. In fact, we were in Anaheim when we won our 35th game,
right,
to go 35-5 out of our first 40 games we played. And I remember going back to the room after the game was over and sitting on my bed. I just kind of plopped down on the bed and I was just, thinking, kind of recapping the game, and all of a sudden I was like, we've played 40 games at Major League level, and we won 35 out of those 40 games, which is amazing. I mean, it's amazing. But, in retrospect and, in all honesty, the Toronto Blue Jays were not that far behind us, even though we started 35-5. And we went from there to Seattle, ironically enough, and Seattle wasn't that good. They ended up sweeping us in a 3-game series. So we went 35-5, and they swept us. And, reality kind of kicked in, pretty quick. And I was getting up every morning looking at the paper, and I was like, man, if we lose a few more games, and Toronto wins a few in a row, they get hot, and they're going to be right on us. They're going to be right there with us, even though we've had an amazing start. So, the 35-5 start was great. The middle of the season, we played a little bit above 500, but then at the end of the season, we kicked it back in and started separating ourselves from the rest of the pack. So I think we end up winning our division by 15 games or something. But
wow.
I mean, very unrealistic to think that we could keep that pace up. But, it was awesome to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Part of the fun of being 35-5 is you've won 35 out of 40. And part of the trouble is we're only a couple games ahead. That's how good Toronto was playing too. Once you finally get to the postseason and you've won 100, 103 or 4 games, you hadn't been there before. And neither had all the guys that Whitakers and the Trammels and Kemps and Morris. This is first. How did things change differently from a playoff perspective? Was there something Sparky said with a bunch of rings on his fingers from what the 79-80 World, or excuse me, 69-70 World Series, the 72, 75, 76? He's got some clout. Did he ask you to do anything differently once you guys got into the playoffs in the World Series?
No, just stay focused. I will say that, excuse me, down the stretch, I think he let us play throughout the course of the summer. Like I say, we played a little bit above 500. When we were coming down the stretch, it was, he had a few meetings, and the message was, can't afford to take your foot off the pedal, boys.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to keep going.
Yeah.
This is not a cakewalk, and if we're not ready when we hit the postseason, it's going to be to our detriment. So you got to stay motivated. You got to stay focused. I mean, everything that he could think of to say was not only him, it was Roger Craig. It was the rest of our coaches were trying to keep everybody focused on what we hadn't accomplished anything yet. I mean, yeah, we had a great regular season, but nobody remembers anybody when they have a great regular season. They don't win at all. In fact, I was talking to Brett Boone not too long ago. He was on that Seattle team that I think won, 119 regular season games. And they got in the playoffs with the Yankees, and the Yankees bumped them off. So It's like, yeah, you had an amazing year, but you didn't win the prize. So, we were, I think our ball club was very focused, very driven. We had, the one great thing about that team with Darrell Evans and Dave Bergman, Kirk Gibson, and Alan Trammell and Larry Herndon, and all of us, I think we pushed one another and we held each other accountable. I mean, we wanted to be champions, and we were going to do everything that we had to do to become a champion and not leave anything on the table. So I think from that perspective, it was a great group of guys, very motivated, very desirous of winning a national or a world championship, I should say. And, we eventually got it done. But, we fed off of one another. Gibby was amazing. He's probably the most motivating guy that I've ever been around in my life. I mean, he would go off on occasion. It was kind of funny, but it was actually inspirational. He would just lose his mind sometimes. And, I think everybody loved that. It fired everybody up. So, we had the right ingredients feeding, the monster at the same time.
Well, you get through the playoffs. San Diego Padres, what a lineup those guys had with Templeton and Garvey. You got Goose. You got some guy named Tony Gwynn over there on the other side. How you get him? And you prep for that. Give me an idea of what it was that you haven't been in a World Series before. Were you nervous the night before the game, the first game, and being there for the lineup and all that? Have you finally getting a chance to say this is my turn? Was there anything that was a special? I can't believe I'm here. I want to stop and just get pinch myself because I'm in a World Series for the first time. Anything like that for you then, Lance?
Well, maybe for me personally, I had I had another distraction, that probably took my focus off of the, I guess, importance of what was going on in the World Series. My wife was due to give birth to our daughter during that time. When we were in the playoffs with the Royals, her due date was like right now. And I had always promised her that I was going to be there for the birth of all of our children, which I was for the first two. But I told her, look, there ain't no way I'm missing a playoff game or a World Series game. I don't care what happens. So we played our first two games in Kansas City, and then we flew home and had an off day. It was on October 4th that we had the off day. Actually, my wife's birthday was on October 5th. She was scheduled, her due date was October 5th on her own birthday.
Wow.
And she was ready. And we had talked to the doctor and said, look, if she doesn't have this baby before then, she's having it on the 4th. So that was the off day. We got off the plane. I went right to the hospital from the airport. And she was induced on October 4th. She gave birth to our daughter, Ashley. And then the next day, we played our last game against Kansas City and beat them. And it was all good. Then we sat home and waited to see who was going to win between Chicago and San Diego. I'm sure Tram, being from San Diego, wanted, the Padres to win. I didn't really care. I don't know if anybody else really cared. I always, and I hate to say this, but I always thought that Chicago would have given us a little bit more of a battle than San Diego. And I don't know why I say that, but it's just, watching the Cubs, I just thought that they had a little bit stronger team. But, the Padres were the National League representative, and, that's who we ended up playing. And was I nervous? No. I was probably more nervous first game of the playoffs when I got behind the plate in Kansas City. And before anybody even threw a pitch, after Jack had thrown his warm-up pitches, I sat there, for a minute and gathered my thoughts. And I thought, if we don't win at all this that we have accomplished up this point is going to be for nothing. Because even though we've had a great year, it's really not a great year unless you win the whole thing. So, that kind of went in and out of my head that quick, and I never thought about it again. And it was, kind of get down to business. But, our team was, ready for the challenge. We battled the heck out of the Royals. The Royals were a very good team as well.
Yeah.
I don't think, and everybody goes, well, you played the Royals and you end up sweeping. I go, hey, Kansas City had a really good team. I go, we played them earlier in the summer, I think in Detroit, and they swept us in a 4-game series. That's how good they were.
Yeah.
George Brett and everybody else they had a good team. So we didn't take them lightly at all. Our pitchers stepped up. We got enough runs to get the job done. But when we went to San Diego, and the funny thing is, so here I am. My wife just had a baby. We're sitting at home because she just got home from the hospital. We're waiting to see who we're going to play. So Padres are playing the Cubs. If the Cubs win, they're coming to Detroit to start the series in Detroit because they wanted the series to be a nighttime series, and Chicago didn't have any lights at that time.
Right.
So we were going to start because I think it was going to start on the week. I don't remember. But anyway, the Padres end up winning. They had a plane ready for us. We all jumped on the plane, and I had asked our general manager, Jim Campbell, if because he didn't allow any kids on the team flight. My wife, which he loved my wife, so that helped. But she just gave birth to our daughter, and she wants to come out to San Diego for the World Series. Can she bring the baby on the flight? Well, she had, number one, get permission from her doctor, and the doctor said, well, I'm not worried about you. I'm not worried about the baby. I'm worried about you. You just gave birth to, and she goes, well, I'll be fine. And I might never get this opportunity again, so I want to go.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be prophetic because that was the only time in my career that I was even in the postseason. So we fly out to San Diego. her sister comes down to help take care of the baby while she goes to the game. But, I mean, my mind was preoccupied with that. I'm trying to concentrate on the baseball end of it. And it was like, man, but yeah, so we got down to the games. And I mean, once you get on the field, as you well know, and you start competing, everything else goes out the window. So I think everybody was really focused. We did not know what we were up against. There was no interleague play back then. The Padres had spring training in Arizona, so we never even got to see them in spring training. So we just never really knew what we were going to be up against when we faced the San Diego Padres. But we came out swinging, and we jumped on all, the way that it went down, obviously looking over all the games, we jumped on all of their starters early in every game. And it was their bullpen that ended up shutting us down. But we always, managed to be able to take enough advantage of their starting pitching that ended up making a difference, with the exception of that last game we played in Detroit when, we jumped on Goose for a couple innings. But, their bullpen did a heck of a job against us.
Yeah, well, it was a fantastic time for you. Could you go to the grocery store? Could you go to the bank? Could you go,
No.
for a walk down anywhere? What was that like, leading up to that? My gosh, as much as you say that, the hockey town, go blue, right? The Michigan Wolverines in Ann Arbor, but to have the Tigers be there, that was a special and very rare occasion there in Detroit. What was that like from a fan perspective?
Well, from that perspective, it gave me an opportunity to realize just how many people paid attention to baseball in Detroit. Because everywhere I went, whether it was the grocery store or, out to a movie or wherever I would take my wife or, family to go out to a restaurant, everybody was, tuned in to what was going on with our ball club. And, I ended up shaking hands and, talking to a lot of people and signing a lot of autographs and taking pictures. And that's all part of the deal. And, I was excited just from the mere fact that it seemed like everybody in Detroit, everywhere I went, was in a good mood and talking baseball. When you went to the ballpark every day, everybody in the stadium was in a good mood. So it was a great atmosphere. It was fun to be a part of. I wish I could have been a part of that a lot more times in my career, but that one year was pretty special.
Yeah.
Hey, Harper, I want you to, what do they say? A picture's worth 1,000 words.
You bet.
I want you to show that picture again of Alan Wiggins. There's no way in hell Alan Wiggins was getting by him. Show that picture. Yeah. No, there's another one you showed.
There is. Yeah, just a second.
That's a play, and
that's a picture. Do you think Alan Wiggins was getting by that?
Well,
Look how his leg. Look how he had his legs positioned to block him. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Well, I was told early on, you better get your big butt in front of that plate and don't let anybody.
No, that's a great picture.
Yeah.
In the World Series, no less.
Two different photographers, Lance. This first one, what got me when I was looking these up is the bat right behind you, right? And then in this one here, bat's still there, but
they never did get to the bat, so I wasn't worried about the bat.
No, I know. Wiggins kind of hit a roadblock, didn't he, Bob? He looks like
his legs are as strong as his torso and his arms. Look at his leg.
Well, his right leg looks like it just ran into
Well, as you recall, there was a play like that right there in Detroit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, he slid by home plate and he went so far out and I stretched as far as I could stretch. And I thought I just grazed his jersey, but, and I couldn't hear the umpire make the call, so, he slid by and as you well know, if the umpire doesn't make a call, there's not a call to be made. He didn't touch the plate. I didn't touch him. So I felt like I got to get up and go after him and tag him to make sure that he calls him out. Well, he got up and, started backpedaling to the dugout, and I chased him all the way there and eventually tagged him. And, Dick Williams came out of the dugout and was, talking to the umpire, and he was like, you called him out. And he goes, I did call him out. And he goes, well, then if you called him out, why do you think Lance would have chased him to the dugout? And he goes, well, I don't know why he would do that. He goes, it's a pretty foolish thing to do. And he said something to me, and I go, hey, it's so, I mean, the fans are right on top of you. I go, I couldn't hear a word you said. I didn't know if you called him out or you even made a call. And I knew he didn't touch home plate, so I was just making sure that I tagged him before he tried to get back here. So, it was like a big deal. But he eventually, was called out, obviously, and that was the end of that. But it's just one of those deals. That I can't even remember his name. I'm drawing a blank. But, when I went to the National League, I don't know if he held that against me or what, but he stuck it to me every time he was behind the plate. I couldn't stand him.
Well, your basketball prowess kicks in here just a little bit, Lance, on the left. Once you finally win it, you're 8 or 9 feet in the air, right? I can get more than a credit card underneath you in that vertical that you got here.
Oh, I was on my way down. I was way up.
Yeah, that's right.
I wanted to talk to you with all your great pitching with Jack Morris and this guy and that guy. Willie Hernandez won the Cy Young Award, right?
He did.
He was
MVP. Interesting thing about Willie Hernandez, we got him in a trade in spring training from the Phillies. And Dave Bergman was a part of that trade. Excuse me. And we traded Glenn Wilson and John Walkenfuss for both of them, who both were good friends of mine.
Right.
And here we're getting some guy named Dave Bergman and Willie Hernandez. I didn't know either one of them. So I was pissed because, they're trading and I'm thinking, what are we doing? We're trying, Glenn Wilson was a pretty highly thought of prospect in our organization. So I was thinking, man, I thought we were trying to build this dynasty and you're getting rid of our best players. Well, then Willie comes along and, ends up winning the Cy Young and the MVP. And Dave Bergman was a huge contributor. He was one of those guys, just like Darryl, that was not only a great contributor on the field, but in the clubhouse as well. I mean, those guys were tremendous clubhouse leaders and basically taught us, a lot of things about how to play the game and, things to be aware of when you're out on the field. So can't give enough credit to Darryl and Dave Bergman from that respect. But, Willie Hernandez, with the year that he had, he was amazing. And, the other thing was Aurelio Lopez, who was our closer before Willie Hernandez came on board, was his setup guy that year.
Yep.
Well, all Aurelio did was go 10-1 with 14 saves and like a 2-something ERA himself. So between the two of them, when it got to both of them at the end of the game, it was game over. They slammed the door.
Hey, Harper, I want to show you this picture that Darryl gave me, which is hanging in my office. But he was mentioning Dave Bergman. I want you to take a look at this picture.
There you go.
Isn't that a great picture?
Can you? Oh, I guess you can read everybody's signature. I was going to say, can you name all those guys? But yeah, they're all names.
Tom Brookins, Dave Bergman, Jack Morris, Darryl Evans, Lance Parrish.
There you go. Great picture.
Hey, Bob, there's some 80 porn mustaches in that one. I'm telling you right now.
Good crew.
Good crew, guys, you bet.
I got to tell you, I'm a Dodger fan, but because of my relationship with Darryl, that's my favorite team of all time because I just love seeing. And Darryl's dad, unfortunately, passed away in August and loved baseball and didn't get to see that, but I'm sure he's watching from upstairs. But what it was just so great to see his whole. I always said this about Darryl, his mother and dad. That if Darryl was the president of the United States and not Ronald Reagan, they wouldn't have been happier than him being a major league player. That made them the proudest people in the world, and to see him get to the World Series and win was just unbelievable. And what an amazing team! Every one of you guys, whether it's Dwight Lowry, whether it's Marty Castillo, I mean, the whole team, they just all came together.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. And the reality is a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of great players that have played, a lot of years in Major League Baseball and never got a chance to
100%.
be in a World Series or be a world champion. So even though I only got to experience it once, that year was well worth it because
how many times? Ask Al Kaline. Ask Al Kaline how many times he went.
60, second best team in Tiger history, the 68 Tigers.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He won once. He did go once.
What's that?
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, they had a great team. I mean, obviously.
Norm Cash, Al Kaline. I remember that team.
Bill Freehan. The amazing thing about that 68 team that a lot of people don't realize is Mickey Stanley.
Yep.
Mickey Stanley was an outfielder, and Mayo Smith put him at shortstop for the World Series. And he played shortstop without ever having played shortstop the entire year. Put him at shortstop in the World Series,
Wow.
and he pulled it off. So, kudos to Mickey Stanley, but that was a huge step, by
Absolutely.
Mayo to do something like that.
Real quick, if you don't mind, was there something in the 83 or early in that 84 season, going 35-5, obviously, that has a lot to do with it. But did you notice that when I came to Atlanta, I signed with the Falcons, and the Braves, this is in 1991, the Braves used to lose the game 3-2. Then they started turning it around, and early in that 91 season, they'd win the game 3-2. They'd be down by 3 in the 4th inning. They'd be down by 1 in the 8th inning, and they'd end up winning it by 2. Did you notice anything like that with your club, to be able to? We're not losing the games that we used to. We're winning the ones that we need to, and then we're also getting that one extra win per series, if you will. And just we're doing things a little bit different. We're not giving up any more runs, and we win 6-5 instead of losing 7-6. You know what I mean, Lance? Was there anything that you noticed in that particular time?
Well, I can say that we developed a mindset on our team, and maybe it developed during the early part when we won our first 17 games on the road, went 35-5. We honestly felt like it didn't matter what the score was. We were still in the game, and we were going to find a way to win. And, when we got down towards the latter innings of the game, it was like, okay, whoever's leading off, all you got to do is get on base any way you can, and kind of get this thing going. And it happened over and over. The guys that, don't get enough credit are the guys that, played on our bench that year that weren't, everyday guys in the lineup, but they kept themselves prepared. And it seemed like every single, and it's just one of those years again, but it seemed like every time Sparky put him in a game to pinch hit or to do this or do that, they always came through. It just, they probably didn't always come through, but it seemed like they always came through.
Right. Yeah.
And it was just a mindset that we developed that nobody was good enough to beat us. Even if we were down late in the game, we felt like we were going to come back, and more times than not, we did. So it was, it was that kind of mentality that took us all the way through the season. So, I guess that's the mindset you have to have if you want to be a champion.
Was there anything about the parade or, being able to, celebrate and just hoist the trophy yourself that helped you accomplish, or at least feel like you accomplished something? I know your daughter is not even, a week or 10 days old. Your wife is there over the, and I'm not missing a game, but just for you professionally, was that just a, unique and special moment for you for obvious reasons? What did you go through in terms of the celebration that, you're always going to be a world champ. Every time you go back, world champion Lance Parrish, and you got to be able to enjoy that.
Oh, it's well, it's a very special feeling. I mean, I keep saying that I hope that in my lifetime we get to see another world champion here in Detroit. But until that happens, we are the last team to accomplish that.
Right.
It was a very special year. Everybody in Michigan that was around, and maybe even they might not have been around and have been told about, the 84 team and the 84 season. But it was a very special year. And, the parade was great. It seemed like everybody in Michigan was downtown Detroit.
Yep.
It was just wall-to-wall people, confetti and people throwing stuff. And we were up on a big stage, talking to the crowd, and they're all, screaming and yelling. I do remember sitting in a convertible with my wife, our daughter, and the two boys, and they're climbing around and whatnot. And I was sitting on the side, and I just turned my head to look into the crowd, and somebody had a handful of rice, I think, and just threw it. I mean, it's like I felt like I got hit with a shotgun. I mean, they just plastered me right in the face. It was like, what the, so that's something that I'll never forget. But, I was after a while, I looked at the guy like, are you out of your mind or what? But, that whole experience of everybody coming together for that moment to celebrate our team and what we had accomplished is something that I don't think anybody that was there will ever forget. And after the game was over, when we clinched it, you know, things were getting pretty crazy outside the stadium. They tried to encourage all of us, don't be in a hurry to leave here. He goes, they said, you know, there's some stuff going on outside, and, you know, you just might need to hang around and wait for things to calm down. But the great thing was, is I think it started raining. So I think the rain had more of a factor in dispersing everybody outside the stadium so we could eventually get the heck out of there. But it was, you know, I came back to my wife and I had a condo at the time, and we came back and all the neighbors had put flowers and all kinds of other stuff around the porch and everything.
Wow.
You know, so, I mean, it's just a lot of things that were really, really neat.
It's an amazing time. Go ahead, Bob.
I was looking at that picture where he's got a red ass with the umpire. The picture you just showed.
You bet.
The umpire.
Yeah.
Look at that picture.
What the heck? Well, you know,
Look at Daryl looking at him. That's great.
How can you call that ball two? That ball was right over the middle of the plate. Yeah.
well, you know, every once in a while we'd go toe to toe. So that's baseball.
Yeah.
That's a great picture. Great picture.
Well, and you're the guy to do that. A couple of years later, though, things change. Talk about going to Philadelphia in '87. They end up going 80 and 82 the first year, 65 and 96 the second. They finish in sixth place there in their division. Tough times, I guess, right? You know, a good team. Don't get me wrong. But
once again, there was a lot of things going on for me, and it was a difficult time. I never wanted to leave Detroit. It was actually the during the collusion era, you know, and you guys are familiar with that.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting thing is, leading into that, I was coming off a 6-year contract, and my agent had flown into spring training, was negotiating an extension to my contract, so I didn't have to go through free agency or whatever. I wanted to stay in Detroit. And we had come to an agreement on a multi-year extension to my contract that would have kept me in Detroit for a number of years. And before I could get my name on that contract, they pulled the offer off the table. And I was like, what the heck happened? Well, that was the beginning of the collusion debacle. And I guess the owners were instructed not to sign guys to long-term deals, and they were going to shut down free agency. There was going to be no player movement. So, you know, my general manager, Jim Campbell, decided, you know what, we're gonna wait and see if we can, you know, get a better deal at the end of the year, because he's not going to be able to go anywhere. Well, you know, so that kind of pissed me off, to be honest with you. And then the other thing that I had going against me was I had broken a bone in my back. I had a broken pedicle in my lower back. And I had done that in spring training, and I went through the entire first half of the season. And
Wow.
you know how you have that sciatic thing, and my back was absolutely killing me the whole first half of the season. But I was being productive. I think I had 22 home runs and 60 RBIs or something at the All-Star break. And I made the All-Star team, and, you know, everything was looking good, you know, for my free agent year. And all of a sudden, I tried to get out of bed like a couple of weeks after the All-Star break. I couldn't get out of bed. My back just locked up, and I was immobile, really. So I flew out to Southern California to see Robert Watkins at the Curlin Job Clinic. And, you know, he told me he didn't want to operate on me because he goes, if I nick a nerve, he goes, typically I can do this with no problem. And he goes, I can go in and put a little metal bar with some screws on there and you'll be good. He goes, but with what you do for a living and your age, he goes, if I just happen to nick a nerve while I'm in there, he goes, your career is going to be over. So I said, well, then we're not doing it, obviously. He goes, no. He goes, you can rebound from this if you'll do all these exercises and everything, core strengthening and stabilize your spine. So I had that going for me as well. Well, I missed the entire second half of the season. And then when the year was over, you know, I got a clean bill of health from the doctor, and, you know, I'm a free agent, and they called me into the office, and they offered me a 1-year deal for the same amount of money that I was making the year before. And I go, I'm not doing it. I said, I'm not, because I was coming off a 6-year deal where, according to, how they operate contractually, I was always compared to everybody else in baseball. And I was told by my general manager that that's how we figure out who gets what. They compare, so I compared myself to Gary Carter. I mean, I was putting up, almost identical numbers to him being in the National League. He was making well over $2 million. I wasn't even making $1 million a year at that time. Yeah. So they brought me in and said, we're offering you a 1-year deal for the same amount of money you made last year. And I go, I'm not doing it. I said, I played half a year last year and I've got better numbers than just about every catcher that played an entire year. I said, and you're not going to give me a $1 raise? I said, I'm not doing it. So we went back and forth and, long story short, collusion thing set in. They figured I wasn't going to go anywhere. They offered me arbitration at the very end. And I said, I'm not doing arbitration. I said, yeah, I'll sign a 1-year deal, but you're going to pay me what I'm worth. And they wouldn't do that. So, okay, well, nobody was supposed to break rank from the owners, but Bill Giles came over, flew out to California from Philadelphia and said, I'm not supposed to be doing this, but, I think that you could, he basically said, we're like a catcher away from being a championship ball club. And I think that you could really help us. So, I'm going to make you a 1-year deal and blah, blah, blah. And I told the Tigers, if anybody offers me anything, I'm leaving because I can't believe you're doing this to me. And, they stuck to their guns. So, I ended up leaving. I mean, it killed me to do it. And, my wife wasn't real happy either, but I ended up going to Philadelphia. Well, it took me a while to recover from this back thing. And even though I thought I was over it, I wasn't really over it. And it didn't help me any to go to Philadelphia and play on AstroTurf because that just, compounded, the issues that I was having. And I didn't have the greatest year. I played there 2 years. I did not do very well. I didn't play up to my expectations at all. And, I was more disappointed in myself. And I know the fans were disappointed in the way that I played. But, I did the best that I could do. I was on the disabled list once when I made an all-star team, the all-star team my second year there. But, when they got the second look free agency after my second year there, Bill Giles ended up sending me to California because he was adamant about, if I was going to become a free agent, then he was just going to move me and try to get something for me or whatever. So I was like, okay, whatever. So he goes, you tell me where you want to go and I'll trade you there. So I said, all right, trade me to Anaheim because that's where I grew up. I figured, I want to play for the Angels. So, we had like a one series left in the season. We were in Montreal and I found out, that the last game they sent me to Anaheim. So I was like, all right, great. So, the rest is history. So I went to Philadelphia, went to California, played there for a few years. And then I bounced around, with different clubs after that. And I was just basically trying to hang on to a job. But, I met a lot of great people, but I would have loved to have been able to play my entire career in Detroit.
Yeah. Hey, if you don't mind, you mentioned something that was kind of interesting to me. You don't have to do the numbers. Please, I want to be respectful of what that process is like. But I kind of, when Bob and I first started, you told us the story of you going in the back room at the house with your scout in at the table in the kitchen, and your dad going $60,000. It's fantastic. I love it. But you were making a fraction of what some of the other catchers, you mentioned Gary Carter or Boone or Brian Downing or any of the other guys that were in the league at that time. And I'm not asking you to remember exactly, but you had won the World Series and it was time to renegotiate. You had a 6-year deal. If it were up to me, I'm the way I would verbalize it, guys, I want something that's not just fair, but we need to catch up because I've been playing for less than what a lot of other guys were. Is there any truth in what I'm saying there? And then when you're negotiating and they won't give you even $1 raise, that had to be kind of insulting. But what would the teacher do? What would the union worker do? Or what would the construction guy do who's been there for 6 years and go, you're not going to pay me extra? I don't understand. I helped you build the best building and teach the best kids and put stuff together. Give me a little bit of your business perspective, if you don't mind, and what you'd learned over the years and just how the negotiating table was changing.
Well, all I can say is when I first started out in the major leagues, it was impressed upon me by our general manager, Jim Campbell, that this is the way the salary structure worked in baseball. You play a season, you put up certain numbers.
This is what you're worth. Yeah, well, depending on your position, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. So based on whatever numbers you put up, you are compared to other players in your same category. And, whatever salaries those guys are making, that puts you in that category. So here I was, and I had signed a 6-year deal. I knew that. I mean, there were a few guys, and during the course of that time, that had signed long-term deals that still had a few years left on their contract that wanted to renegotiate with their teams because they were having great years and they felt like they were underpaid. You know, and I watched that whole process play out, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be that guy. I signed this contract. I'm going to honor this contract. I feel like if I keep putting up numbers and when this contract is over, the Tigers are going to take care of me. But they didn't do that. And, they kind of actually stuck it to me, because they were more than willing to sign me to an extension in spring training. And then they pulled the offer right off the table and made me wait till the end of the year, and it's just
right.
Unfortunate circumstances that happened after that. But, that's the way that I guess the business diagram for me was set up in baseball, and it's just the way it is today. Everything's comparative. You could go to arbitration and make, win your case. Tarek Skubal just, won his deal for $32 million a year. Well, if nobody else was making $32 million, the next guy comes along and wins a couple Cy Young awards, then he's going to be compared to Tarek Skubal. That's how they operate all the way through it. So I felt like here I am I think I was making $850 at the time at the end of that contract. Okay. And Gary Carter was making over $2 million. I wasn't asking for anything that I felt like was, out of the, I just thought I wasn't being unfair in asking for what I was asking. I just wanted to be paid what I felt like I was owed, and that they would do that. The funny thing is, with the regime that they have now, the Illiches, God bless them, Mike Illich and Chris Illich, they adhere to that. They pay guys what they're worth. It's just, it's understood that, all right, if you get to a certain point, you're due this much money and this is what we're going to offer you. And, it's all understood. But back then, Jim Campbell was very cheap and, trying to save money and it was at my expense and everybody else's expense. The thing was with that 6-year contract, I came into the ballpark 6 years prior to that, at the end of the season. And I was told by the parking lot attendant that Mr. Campbell wanted to see me in his office, right? So I said, okay, great. So I went up in his office and I sit down and he reaches in his desk and opens a drawer and pulls out a stack of papers and flips them on the desk in front of me. And he goes, there you go. And I look at it and I go, well, what is that? He goes, well, look at it. I go, okay. So I look at it and it was a contract. It was actually a 7-year contract. And he wanted me to sign it right then and there. And I look at it and I mean, it was for more money than I had ever, made in my life, obviously. But it was one of those deals where I have an agent. I have somebody that represents me. And you're asking me to come in here and just sign this contract. And I go, hey, this is a great offer. I go, I appreciate, you wanting to keep me around for 7 years, but I can't sign that. I go, I have to talk to my agent. And he goes, if you talk to your agent and get him involved, you're just going to have to pay him a percentage of this. And I just go, I can't just sign this contract. I said, so, you need to, and I mean, he got so crazy, started yelling at me, and I finally just ended up leaving. And I called my agent, and he was pissed, obviously. And he ended up talking to Campbell afterwards, and they go, well, I got the same amount of money for 6 years rather than 7 years. Okay. But that's kind of how they operated back then. And, and I honored that contract, and I was very productive all the way through it. But then at the end of the day, it wasn't good enough. So,
Wow.
Lance, I thought you honestly were going to go down the alley that goes, if you leave this room, that offer is off the table. You can't talk.
Well, that's the one thing he didn't say. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, obviously the negotiation, all that, Philadelphia, and then you get to go to Anaheim. Talk a little bit about the Angels and
I love
being close to home and getting to see some old friends, obviously, during the off season. Play a little golf, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, what can you say about Anaheim? I mean, I grew up there. I grew up not too far from the stadium. The weather was perfect every single day and night, obviously. You guys, being from out there know. So, being home in front of my family, people that I went to school with, it was just amazing. I enjoyed every minute of it. My family, my wife and kids got to finally come home and live in our house that we had there for a summer, uninterrupted. But it was, played for Doug Rader, who was, I mean, there's some great Doug Rader stories, but, he was he was so much fun to play for. And we had some great guys on that team. I mean, the teams that I played on.
The Red Rooster.
Dave Parker, Dave Winfield, Brian Downing, Chili Davis. I mean, I go down the list. There's Devon White was our center fielder. He was amazing. We had a great pitching staff. Chuck Finley, Mark Langston, Jim Abbott, Bert Blyleven, Kurt McCaskill,
Mike Witt. Sorry.
Mike Witt. In fact, I caught a combined no-hitter of Mark Langston and Mike Witt, because we came out of spring training, and it was one of those where we had an abbreviated spring training. We lost some time for whatever reason, so Langston he didn't have his pitch count up high enough. So I think he pitched 6 or 7 innings and had to come out of the game, and he had a no-hitter.
I remember that.
And then Mike Witt went in and finished the deal. So we had a combined no-hitter. So,
hey, Lance, was that the only no-hitter you caught?
No, actually, I caught Jack Morris's no-hitter in '84.
That's right.
Yeah. In the first week of the '84 season, Jack Morris threw a no-hitter against the White Sox.
Yep. Wow.
So that was pretty fun, too.
You've had a couple of them. Well, the Angels ends in '92, and then you go to Seattle. You finished the year there. Was that still Kingdom? Kingdom was a tough place to play, wasn't it? I mean, baseball. That was tough.
Well, it was different. I'll say that. I mean,
different. Okay, fair enough.
I'll be honest with you. When I came in there as a visiting player, it just it took me a little while to get adjusted to that. It was, you were a little out of sorts going into that facility. But, I mean, it was nice. I didn't mind it. But when I played there every day with the Mariners for that, half of the season, it was a lot of fun to be there. And, great group of guys there as well. Junior was there, Griffey, and the big unit. I got to catch it. In fact, one of the amazing games that I was able to catch, we were playing Texas in Texas, and he hooked up against Nolan Ryan. Okay, so they both go into the 8th inning, and I can't honestly. I'm drawing. I can't remember if the game was tied. I think it was tied, and it was like 1-1 or something like that. Nolan, since we were the visitors, came back out for the 9th inning to pitch the 9th inning. And Nolan's like 40 years old at this time. Randy, at the end of the 8th inning, said, "I'm done. I'm gassed. I've had it. Blah blah blah." And I'm going, wait a minute. I mean, at that time, I think he had 18 strikeouts or something.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, you're like sitting on the precipice here of setting a record for most strikeouts in a game by a left-handed pitcher. And I go, and Nolan Ryan just went back out, and you're not going to go back out? He goes, I'm done. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I honestly, I don't remember how that game turned out even, but I was just pissed that he wouldn't go back out so that we could finish the deal. So
Yeah. Break the record when you can. And for you to know that too, that there's some folks. I've had the great fortune. There's a couple of coaches that I played for that they knew if you were going to play in that city, you'd get in the lineup a little bit differently. They'd work you in, or if you knew some specific umpire, they're just ways. If you're close to a record, if you had an incentive in your contract, they'd want to do everything they could to make it easier and better for you, so that your experience there with that club at that time was maximized. You were trying to do that with Randy, right? Come on, man, let's go one more inning. Let's go.
Oh, well, I mean, he had a chance to do something that nobody had ever done before.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a part of it. So,
yeah.
it's like, he just, he obviously had an amazing career, but, that was our moment together right there. And I wanted to be a part of it. And he just said, no, I'm done. So, end of story.
Well, it is what it is. Speaking of you're done, when your career is over, you still love baseball. You've been a part of it. We'll talk a little bit about that. But what was it like for you knowing, whether it be the last year in Cleveland, you were with Pittsburgh for a little while, you signed with the Dodgers. Was there a time clock at the 17, 18, 19-year portion of your career where you go, if I don't hit at a certain level, or if I can't throw guys out anymore, were there indicators that you had that you said, I may need to, hang up my spikes someday?
I never really thought about that per se.
Okay.
I just wanted to keep playing. I felt like I was still capable. I still felt good. I felt like, given the opportunity, that I could still be productive. I could still throw all the way to the end of my career.
Yeah.
In fact, I think my last year playing was with Toronto in '95, and I threw out 40% of the runners that I faced that were trying to steal. So that in itself was pretty good. And I don't think I made any errors behind the plate. I didn't hit that great, but I was in and out of the lineup. And, if anything, towards the end of my career, I gained an appreciation for guys that were not everyday players, that had to try to, play periodically or come off the bench and, try to hit against, some flame-throwing relief pitcher. I mean, that's not that easy. I mean, you have to be mentally strong and prepared and, be something special to be able to do that. So it wasn't an easy thing for me to do. I still loved playing, and I was always hoping to work myself back into a starting role with somewhere. But after a certain point, even when I went to Seattle, after I left the Angels, which I was the starting catcher with the Angels, but when I went to Seattle, I was splitting time with Dave Valley, and I thought, well, I guess this is, the way the season's going to have to be played out until next year. And then the next year it didn't get any easier. So, I started hopscotching with different teams, and every team that I played for, I felt like, I feel good. I feel like I'm playing good. I'm catching well. I'm working the staff well. I'm throwing well, but I'm kind of, I think they're looking at me as a backup guy, and I never could understand that. It's like, turn me loose, let me play every day. I went to spring training with the Dodgers. I think it was in 93. Is that right? Can't remember now.
I've got it somewhere. You have to forgive me for remembering that.
It was 93, but I went to spring training with the Dodgers, and my agent, who was based in California there, Tom Rich, he calls me up and said,
93.
Huh?
It is 93. Yeah. You're correct.
So he goes, I got you a job with the Dodgers. And I was like, I was pumped because, I grew up listening to the Dodgers, my whole life when I was younger. So I was like, all right, I always wanted to be able to put that uniform on. So I said, great, that's awesome. And he goes, Sosha had already left, I think the year before. And I believe Carlos Hernandez was the guy that took over for him. And he was going to be the starting catcher, and he had filled in pretty solidly, so they liked him. But he told me that, there's another, guy that is in the picture, Mike Piazza, and, it's Tommy's grandson. And he goes, and I'll tell you this, he goes, there's no way Tommy's going to take two rookie guys or young guys to start the season with them. So, you're on this team. And I go, great. So I go to spring training in Vero, and I had a really good spring training. I was hitting the ball well. I was throwing well. I mean, I was doing everything that I thought I had to do to solidify my position on that team. But I'm watching Mike Piazza, and he's just, unbelievable. He lighting it up every single time he's in the game. I mean, he was just tearing the cover off the ball. So I was like, oh. So, I got a firsthand, look at what Mike Piazza was all about. And then at the end of spring training, I was really close friends with Tommy Lasorda. And Tommy called me in the office, and he just goes, I love you. He goes, but you're not going to make this team. He goes, we made a decision to go with Piazza. And I go, hey, I get it. I watched him all spring too. I don't blame you. He's amazing. I said, so if he can keep up what he's been doing, I can't fault you at all for making that choice. He goes, but I'll tell you what we're going to do. We are going to make it so there's no strings attached for the rest of spring training, which there wasn't that much of spring training left. He said, if anybody needs a catcher, he goes, and they call and inquire about you, you're free to go with them, and we won't require any compensation. I go, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, nobody called. So at the end of the season, or at the end of spring training, he said, we're going to offer you the opportunity to go to Albuquerque, play in AAA, if you want to keep playing. And I go, well, I do want to keep playing because I feel like I can still play. And he said, and again, stipulated, if anybody needs catching help, there's no compensation required, and we'll just let you go. And that's the best I can do for you. And I go, well, I can't ask any more than that, and I thank you for that. So I went to Albuquerque and played 3 weeks with Billy Russell in Albuquerque. And all of a sudden I get a call after 3 weeks that the Cleveland Indians need a catcher. And I was, my thought process was, oh my gosh, anywhere but Cleveland. I don't know if you guys had been in that, ballpark that they had, but it was like, that was my least favorite place to go play. It had nothing to do with the people there. It was just that I couldn't envision myself playing in that ballpark. And it was, depressing, actually. But it was like, all right, well, this is the opportunity that I have. So Sandy Alomar Jr., I guess, was having back issues himself, and he was going to probably have to have surgery. So he said, it's Junior Ortiz and you. And if you choose to do it, and he goes, you're going to be the everyday guy. And I go, well, then let's do it. So I go to Cleveland. I sit down with Mike Hargrove, and he tells me, hey, we didn't bring you here to back up. You're going to be catching every day. Well, I did not catch every day. I think I was there for, I think I had 20 or 21 at-bats, and they ended up releasing me at the end of that time, and said that they were going to bring up one of their guys from AAA, and, they were just, whatever, going to go in a different direction, that kind of deal. So I was like, you got to be kidding me. So after that was over, I almost went to Japan to play, but that deal fell through. So then I just sat home for the rest of the summer, and I was like figuring, well, this might be it. But in 94, during the off season, or 93, I guess, I called Sparky. And I said, so I'm asking for a favor. I know that you probably have your team already set, your roster's already set, but I'm asking you if you will let me come to spring training and go through spring training with you guys and work out, and hopefully I can catch somebody's eye. And, maybe if things work out, I might even be in the picture for you guys. And he goes, well, I can tell you right now that there's no way you can make this team because we already have our catching set. I go, all right, well then, if you'll just let me come to spring training, that would be awesome. I would really appreciate that. And I didn't know if that was going to work or not. But he talked to the general manager at the time, and then he called me back and said, okay, it's we're going to let you come, and you can come here and work out just like, you were on the team and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, I went through the same everything that everybody else went through. I played in the games. I did everything. I played in games. I hit a few home runs. I was hitting the ball good. In fact, one of the times I hit a home run in one of the night games they played, and Sparky came up to me and he goes, you know what? He goes, you don't look any different now than you did when you left. And I go, well, I'm available. And he goes, well, I told you you're not going to make this team. But, you know, and at the end of camp, again, he called me in and said, well, I told you that, you know, there's no way you're making this team and you're not going to make it, even though you played very well. And I think you still have, you know, something in the tank. He said, what we can do for you is we can offer you an opportunity to go to AAA again. I'm thinking, wow, I can't believe it. I played like 15 or 16 years in the big league, 17. And I'm going to go back to AAA for the second time to try to hang on. But honestly, I felt like I could still play. So that was my motivation. And I went to Toledo for 3 weeks again. And Jim Leland called. And they needed a catcher in Pittsburgh. So I ended up going to Pittsburgh. And the thing that kind of irked me about that deal was I felt like I played good for Leland. And I knew Leland from back when I first signed with the Tigers because he was part of the Tiger organization. But, you know, right at some point before the season was over, and that particular year in '94, the season ended early because of the baseball strike. And that's the year they didn't play the World Series. They canceled the World Series and all that. So I knew that wasn't, you know, something that was in my best interest, that, you know, they shut the season down in the World Series, because I was still trying to, you know, make an impression but Leland came up to me when we were in Cincinnati, and I'll never forget this, because he asked me, he goes, do you like it here? And I go, what do you mean, do I like it here? He goes, well, do you like being a part of this team? And I go, I absolutely do. I love these guys, you know, I've enjoyed the coaching staff, you know, I would love to come back. And he goes, okay. He goes, that's what I wanted to know. And so I figured, all right, I'm in. Well, as soon as the players went on strike, and as soon as they canceled the World Series, I don't know what deadline they passed or whatever, but I end up reading in the paper that I had more or less been designated for assignment. And they had signed Mark Parent, I think, to the ball club. And I was like, you know, and that happened to me in Seattle. It happened to me in Toronto. It happened to me in Pittsburgh, where all the managers asked me if I liked it there, if I wanted to come back. And I would always say yes. And I felt like after a while, well, this is the kiss of death, man.
Yeah.
Every time I say I want to come back, I end up getting thrown off the boat. So
Yeah.
just never did work out.
Well, sorry to hear that.
Well, it's all part of the experience. So
yeah. Well, 19 years, you certainly you rank amongst some of the best catchers of all time. First and foremost, thank you for your contribution to the game and to the league itself. And it took a lot out of any man to play 19 years, and you got to do that. But the thrill of a world championship, for obvious reasons, Lance, and so many other things, the memories and the camaraderie, the friendships that you have, and because you're a champion for the rest of your life, you'll always be introduced. And we did this here today when we brought it up. You know, you're a World Series champion. You know, there were some tough things that happened, but you know what? There's some really good ones too, weren't there?
Oh, yeah. The good far outweighs the bad.
Absolutely.
Hey, Harper, you know what I always say? I always learn things on this podcast about things I never knew. Now I figured out one of the reasons he's always been a badass is Mom and Dad were Marines. Come on.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I think my mom was badder than my dad.
Yeah.
Your desire to stay in the game, even though you had to hang up your cleats, you still got to wear a pair. You started coaching and managing. Talk a little bit about that desire. And it was a little while, a couple years before you decided to dip your toe in that pool. Can you express a little bit about how you came across that and in the process? You already knew a bunch of people, especially in the front offices, and asking to be on the other side of the white lines, not so bad, right?
Not at all. Well, first and foremost, I love the game of baseball, and I felt when my playing career was over, and actually Sparky was the guy that told me, look, if you have a desire to stay in the game and coach or manage or whatever, he goes, I would encourage you to get in right after, you're done playing. Don't hang around and wait, and, because the door might close on you. So, get in as quick as you can and see if you enjoy it. And if you do, then, just see where it takes you. So I ended up hooking up with the Dodgers, became a coach on their AA team in San Antonio. Ron Renicky was the manager. In fact, my very first year coaching in professional baseball, my debut coaching, we won the Texas League. So it's pretty awesome. We had a great team, and Ron was a great manager. We had a lot of fun, and we were Texas League champions. So the next year, I ended up coaching again in San Antonio. Ron Renicky, when they had the big managerial rotation working, Billy Russell was in the big leagues by then. He got let go. Glenn Hoffman was the AAA manager. He got bumped up to manage the big league club. Ron Renicky went to Albuquerque to manage the AAA team, and I was offered the managerial position with the AA team in San Antonio. So I ended up managing the second half of the season, and we ended up winning the first half, so we were guaranteed to get in the playoffs regardless of what I did. We ended up, not obviously winning the Texas League championship that year, but, it was a great experience for me. I loved doing it. And right after that year was over, ironically, the Tigers called me. And Randy Smith was the general manager of the Tigers, and he had called and asked me if I would be interested in being on the coaching staff in Detroit. Larry Parrish was going to be the manager, and they wanted to bring in, some, I guess, Tiger blood. So, they brought me in and Alan Trammell in. So I was the third base coach, and I think Tram was the hitting coach at that time. And, it was a fun year. I mean, we didn't accomplish a whole lot. We didn't have a very good team, but, just to get my feet wet at the major league level. And unfortunately, at the end of the year, Larry got fired, and they brought in Phil Garner, and he didn't keep Tram around, but he kept me around. And, we kind of, I guess, had some issues after the first year. I ended up getting let go by Phil on the last year of my contract. I ended up going into the booth to do some TV work. They actually offered me an opportunity to go back to the minor leagues and manage at the AA level. And or be the color commentator on the network games that they did with the TV thing. And I said, I would, if that's my options, I would much rather stay close to the big league club. So I took the TV thing. So I did the TV thing, and I mean, crazily enough, the very first game of the season, wait a minute, I think it was the first home game. Because we were going to televise that game. Phil Garner got fired. Dave Dombrowski had come on board.
Oh, wow.
Fired Randy Smith, fired Phil Garner, a few of the coaches. And I was, and our TV thing was covered. So I'm sitting in the audience watching all this go down, this big press conference, and everybody getting fired. So, I did the TV thing, which was fun. I did it with Frank Beckman, who was a big, well-known Michigan broadcaster here for a number of years. And, I had a fun time doing that. But after the season was over, Tramp was contacted and asked if, he wanted to manage the ball club, which he did. So he brought me back onto the coaching staff. And, I did 3 years with him, and then we all got thrown off the boat again, and Leland came in. So, I went back to the minor leagues. But that wasn't until a few years later. I mean, well, actually, when I got let go by the Tigers, I contacted the Dodgers again. I called Tommy. They gave me an opportunity to manage in Ogden, Utah, which was rookie ball. which, loved doing that. And then the next year I got bumped up to Midland. And then I managed there and kind of got sideways with our farm director, and he fired me. And then I just sat home for a while thinking, well, that's pretty much the end of that. And then in 2014, the Tigers called again. Al Avila was the assistant general manager at the time. And he called me and asked me if I would be interested in managing their AA team in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I said, absolutely. I just wanted to get my foot back in the door. I had always aspired to have the opportunity to manage at the major league level, but I knew that I would have to probably work my way up through the ranks, at the minor league level. So if I could just get my foot back in the door, I thought that might have been a possibility. So I managed 4 years in Erie, and then I managed 2 years in West Michigan. And then they just, Al called me one day and said, well, we're going to take you out of the managerial position and make you a special assistant to the GM. So I was like, okay, well, so that was the end of my coaching experience. But I will say this, the reason that I got into it was because I wanted to have the opportunity to share what I had been taught throughout my career by some people that I thought were great teachers and great coaches, and some things that I thought would really benefit guys that were working their way up the ladder. So I wanted that opportunity. I know everybody that manages or coaches, it's a different form of competing, but you're still in the dugout, battling with the guys, and I really enjoyed that. So for the time that I did it, it was great. It was very, very, very fun to do, and never did get the opportunity to manage at the big league level, but the time that I had in the dugout managing in the minor leagues was awesome. So no complaints.
Did you ever find yourself looking around, Lance? I just have to ask. You're a pretty serious guy, and you're in the business, right? You can't be messing around. But whether it be the curveball drill to hit it right up the middle, or was there any point that you go, I know this isn't me, but it worked on me. This is what some other coach either said or asked me to do. And once I did it, I was a better player because of it. Did you ever find yourself kind of pulling from those roots of things that may have happened 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago and being able to apply that to one of the youngsters today?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's through all of our trials and errors in life, especially in sports, that you should be able to benefit from what works and what doesn't work, and for me, it was an opportunity to go up to somebody and go, hey, what you're doing right now, I've been there and I've tried that and it doesn't work. I'm going to tell you right now.
Right.
And I would never say that anything that I shared with anybody was the absolute answer to their problems. But I would be able to approach them and say, this is something that I did or I saw somebody else do that was a great hitter or a great pitcher or a great fielder, whatever. And they obviously were very successful. Why don't you give it a try and see where it takes you? I don't really like the fact that, coaches sometimes will go up to whoever it might be, a hitter, a pitcher, whatever, and say, this is what you have to do. And there's no two ways about it. Just do it this way, sink or swim. Because when I mentioned to you when I was hitting in the batting cage, early in the morning in AA in Montgomery, Alabama, Les Moss never said to me, I want you to stand this way or hold your hands this way or your feet this way. It was like he gave me an objective. This is what I want you to try to accomplish. You need to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it, if you don't accomplish it today, we'll be back tomorrow. And we'll be back the next day. And we'll be back the next day. We'll just keep working on it till you. And if, I would think any professional athlete over a period of time should be able, through trial and error, to figure out, all right, this is how you get it done. Being consistent with it is another thing, but there's a way of figuring out whatever ails you if you do things, in a particular way.
Being able to figure it out by yourself.
There you go.
Can't have somebody else do it. You got to figure it out. That's what
right.
Your job is. And once you do, you will be all the better for it instead of someone doing it for you.
You have to feel it, right? You have to feel it yourself. You have to be able to think about it and feel it. And it's like all of a sudden the light goes on. It's like, oh my gosh, there it is. That's what I need to do.
Do you think that today's game? I have a friend who's a tremendous New York Yankee fan, and Don Mattingly was asked to be a batting coach with the New York Yankees, and he's coached at many different levels. And here's a guy that, what is it, 310? It is, his batting average is absolutely amazing. And he has been quoted as saying, please don't mark this, fans for that are watching, that, you know, this isn't an exact quote, but I'd heard it went something like this: I can't coach kids today because they don't listen to me. They've got a hitting instructor that they have on the club, and then there's an assistant hitting instructor, and then there's a rehab person, there's somebody else. They've got their own trainer working with them, their dad, their mom, their cousins, their agents. They've got all these people telling them what to do. They aren't listening to someone like me. Do you notice that there's a trend in that case from where the kids are today versus you when you were growing up? Is there a tendency to see it that way a little bit?
Well, excuse me. One of my big complaints when I was managing was that there were too many people giving advice. Wasn't really sure everybody was on the same page or giving the same advice, but everybody had their own opinion. When it came to hitting, and I'll say, and this isn't, I'm not criticizing. It's just a matter of fact, the way it is.
Yeah.
When I was managing in West Michigan, I had myself, who played in the big leagues. I was a hitter in the big leagues. I had two coaches that were both in the big leagues that were successful major league hitters, right? We had two roving minor league coordinators, hitting coordinators, okay? That's 5 guys, 6 guys, 5 guys. We would go on the road, and we're on the road, so we really can't work on the stuff we normally would work on at home. All of that extra stuff was usually saved for when we got home, and we could get there early and do whatever we wanted to do. But it seemed like every time we rolled into town, one of the hitting coordinators would be there. And my problem was that those 2 guys, in my opinion, were not on the same page and were not teaching the same things. So it became very confusing for my hitters.
Yeah.
And one guy would tell them one thing, another guy would tell them another thing, another guy would tell them another thing. And you know what? Even though I felt like I had some constructive advice to give, I pretty much removed myself from the equation because I thought, one more voice is not going to help, this situation. So it's great that you have all the help that's out there. But one of the things that I always tried to get our major league hitting coach at the time to do was to make sure that we had an organizational philosophy and everybody was on the same page. Teach the same thing so that you're not confusing these guys. I mean, they want to do, somebody would roll into town and they'd have them do something, and it might have been completely different than what they were told to do last week. And they want to please the coach, so they're working on something, and then the next week they're working on something else. And before you know it, you don't even know what you were doing to begin with. So it becomes very confusing. So my only suggestion or desire in that regard, especially even today, I don't care how many hitting coaches or pitching coaches you have, make sure everybody's got the same message and you're all on the same page and teaching the same thing.
Yeah. And the results speak for themselves. If you're hitting $198, versus 275, there's a big difference between that, and there's a lot of confusion that can take place, especially with the pressure at the minor league level to get it quickly and then be able to move up and all of that other stuff. It's amazing.
What I like what Les Moss told you. Just go in there and swing. He wasn't coaching you or anything.
That's
He's just
right.
go in there and swing.
But
And
I said, it's like he gave me an objective. That's why when we would go into the batting cage, they've got these big, beautiful batting cages now. I said, you know what? Try to hit the back net of the batting cage. That's just an objective. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You need to figure out how to do it.
Right. That's great. That's great coaching.
Huh?
That's great coaching.
I mean, you might be a little late, you might be a little early, you make an adjustment, until you finally hit one up the middle, and it's like, boom. You got to remember what I did there, and then you just build off of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And do it again. Do it again. You'll play for 19 years. Lance, you mentioned your wife, your daughter. I know you've got a son that played. Tell us a little bit more personal life.
Well, actually, I had my two sons that played and a son-in-law that played. My oldest son went to University of Michigan and was drafted by the Yankees out of high school and college, which was crazy. He ended up getting to the big leagues for the Yankees for like a couple days and never got an at-bat, so that kind of bummed me out. Jorge Posada was there. Joe Torre was managing at the time. My younger son, Matt, played for the Tigers. My son-in-law, Kelly Hunt, played for the Tigers. They had an opportunity to play in the minor leagues for a few years and are now businessmen doing other things elsewhere. But, they all enjoyed their time. We're living in Michigan. I've got, my wife and I have 3 kids, 11 grandkids, and they're all playing sports, and we're just running around checking everybody out. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, to quote Gene Mock, Harper, I want to say this. Gene Mock's famous quote was, "The hardest thing in the world is getting to the big leagues for one day." And he used to say, the only thing harder than that is staying there for 2 days.
Well, there you go.
The last 19 years as a catcher, no less, is fantastic. And an all-star catcher.
Well, I feel pretty fortunate. I mean, never would have imagined, the funny thing is, and I've said this before, when I was playing baseball in high school and all that, I never really gave a whole lot of thought to playing in the major leagues. I just loved playing. You know what I mean? I loved competing. I loved playing. A door opened, and I, took advantage of that. When I got to professional baseball, I didn't really ever feel like I put that much pressure on. Like I've got to make it to the big leagues. It was just I just tried to go out and do the best I could. I mean, I was a competitor. I wanted to do well.
Yeah.
But I didn't beat myself up with the fact that if I don't get this done, they're gonna boot me one of these days. It was just I went out and I played. So. I would encourage everybody, no matter what sport you're in, just go out and have fun. Play the way if you relax and have fun and play, you're going to play probably better than you would ever put pressure on. So.
And I love the Les Moss stories. Thank you.
He's a great man. He was a great man. One of my favorites.
Well, I hope your knees, your hips, everything is doing well. We obviously, after 19 years behind the plate, I don't know if you could run as fast as you did when you were 16 or 17 and when you were first drafted, but taking care of yourself, you obviously have, Lance, and working out and doing everything that you can. Not everybody has had that great fortune, though. You and Kirk Gibson are still friends. Tell us a little bit about, what you are doing with the Parkinson's Association and helping every way that you possibly can with Kurt and with the terrible disease that we're talking about.
Well, there's not really a whole lot that I do other than help out whenever I can. Kirk was diagnosed with Parkinson's a few years ago, and he, just like everything he's done in his life, has battled. And I can never give him enough credit for how hard he goes after this and how hard he works to try to, just live a normal life. And to his credit, he has, through his foundation, the Kirk Gibson Foundation, he has opened up a facility here in Farmington Hills, Michigan, that serves other people that have Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's is something that, in his mind, you have to continually move. You have to stay active, work on your hand-eye coordination. This giant facility that they have has got dance classes, exercise classes, ping pong, pool, boxing, you name it. They've got bicycles, stationary bicycles, lifting equipment. His whole philosophy in this whole thing is kind of a use it or lose it kind of a thing. And the more you do, the more you use, your body physically, the more that you can stay on top of
Yep.
the things that are causing you issues. So,
Right.
they opened this up. Gosh, I don't even think it's been a year yet, but it's an amazing facility. People are, I mean, as time goes on, I don't even know if they have, I'm assuming they do. They have plenty of room there, but they've gotten so many people that have come in to take advantage of it. And it's, again, just a great facility. It serves the entire community. Everybody that's got Parkinson's is welcome to go there and take advantage of it. And it's just a great thing. And I'm proud of him for, working towards that and putting in all the hard work that he has to not only try to be there personally to inspire everybody, but to go behind the scenes and, recruit people to get the finances to put something like this together. So it's a very important thing to him. It's a very important thing to the Parkinson community, and it's doing great things. So I would encourage, anybody that has a desire to, contact Kirk through his foundation, the Kirk Gibson Foundation. Just again, it's an amazing outreach for him and for people that have Parkinson's.
Well, thank you for that, Lance. For obvious reasons, it's extremely important. It's a way of giving back. Even if it's just a little bit, it helps. A lot of it would help. So, pleased with the Kirk Gibson Foundation. And, Bob, I want to say thank you. You bring an 8-time All-Star, World Series champion, a guy that's written a book about it, Enchanted Season, a hero forever in the state of Michigan. OHIO, forget that, right? We won't talk about that. That's for a later date. But for obvious reasons, one of the greatest catchers that the league has ever known. So thank you again, Bob, for bringing Lance on.
It's my honor. And Lance, thanks for taking us a walk through your whole life. It's been just, me being a baseball wacko, I couldn't have spent a better time than listening to you. Thank you for the stories.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
It was great.
Well, we greatly appreciate it as well. And Lance Parrish, for obvious reasons, Hall of Fame someday, we'll talk about it, right? Not many guys from the team that he was a world champion with have had their fair share, but Bob and I will talk about that. We have in the past, but certain guys. Bob, how many guys have we talked to that are this close, right? They're just a
like
couple.
Steve Garvey. I mean, there's what? To me, the Hall of Fame used to be Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, Mickey Mantle. Now, I'm not going to mention names, but there's some tomato cans in the Hall of Fame, and you see a guy like this that's not in the Hall of Fame. It just doesn't make sense, So,
well, what's satisfying to me is I'm in the conversation occasionally. So that's
you
good.
kidding me? You're in every Detroit Tiger fan's Hall of Fame. I'll tell you that.
Well, no doubt. Yeah. Well, again, thank you, Lance, for your time. We appreciate it. The stories were great, and obviously your recollection of a 19-year career and being able to go over that tooth and nail. Fantastic. We really appreciate it. We want to thank you for watching the show. This has been 100 Yards of Football, but this is the sports page with Bob Case, and we're very glad that you were able to join us here today. Bob and I try to bring in different sports personalities and get a chance to talk and visit with them and go over some of the intricacies of their life and how they've been successful. We certainly appreciate it. We want to thank you for tuning in. If you like the show, please subscribe and tell a friend. In the meanwhile, we want to say thank you for watching.